Definitely. And one thing I want to point out that you touched base on a little bit in the beginning is like, especially with work, understanding time management. I think what put it into perspective for me specifically was like Eisenhower's method, because I always would think everything's urgent. What do you mean? What's urgent? So hearing the term urgent versus important, things can be urgent, like that's a fire, versus things are important to get done, but they could always get done tomorrow or the next day, because work, personal life, it's everlasting. Like it is continuing to go on. Just because a ball is dropped here or you can't get to this right away, if it wasn't an immediate fire, then sometimes you can postpone that and put that on the back burner too. As long as you're watching that back burner, I will specify.
Yeah, that's really important to specify. There is a difference between, something that's important that really, really, really needs to be done, and then there's some people that would consider a request as urgent when it's not urgent. Like I know I've definitely been through that. Like we may have a new product that doesn't come out for the next like 3 months. And they'll submit it and they're like, this is urgent, it needs to be done. Like I know there's a lot of back end stuff that happens, but like they act like it needs to be done like now. But there are more urgent, like everybody's claiming urgent, urgent. It's almost like going to an auction and like everybody putting their paddles up. Like it makes me think of that because everybody's like, oh, I need mine done. I need this done. I need this done. So it's like sometimes you just have to almost discern within your mind, like, what does really need to be done first. Like this person can wait an hour or two for me to get this done, but I need to get this done right now. So that's a really good point that you brought out, that there is major differences between what is important and what is urgent. And like you said, being sure to keep up with, the things that may not be as important, I said, but still getting back to them on that, just not immediately like they're hoping for you to.
For sure. And communicating that too, communicating when something may not be the most urgent, because that's going to prevent other people from panicking and constantly contacting you as well.
Yeah, so yeah, communication definitely is important. I've definitely, even here this past week I had to do that. Like there was this guy that needed a certain task done within my job, and it was at the end of the day. And like I said, I already had a bunch of other tasks to do, and listen, this guy submitted this request like earlier in the morning, and I think he usually is pretty easy to get along with. So like I did have to tell him like I'll get this done like first thing in the morning, and he's like, okay, no worries, no rush. But there are some people that can be uh that can be a little bit more harder to get along with, and less that can be that type where they are like, oh no, like this needs to be done. It's like, does it really? Like I know this job, like I know like what really is urgent and what's not, and this is not. So like you can wait till 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Like I don't get paid for overtime, so I'm not, I'm sorry, I just can't. Like, I gotta, you know, stay within that, so my time frame. And I mean, I'll sometimes work a few minutes over, but I definitely can't work too far over because as I just overtime is just not. I mean, we can have opportunities to work overtime, especially now with like what I do. But like back then, it was definitely a little bit harder to do. So I suggest time management is super important to incorporate into your blueprint within your mind, and just really being able to discern like what is urgent and what's not urgent, like what needs to be a higher priority to get done, and just at the end of the day, just getting it all accomplished, but just really dealing with really, really urgent things first.
Completely agree.
So my next question is actually going to be on like failures. I know some people are going to be thinking, why failures? So as we know, success is like it definitely is good, but there are definitely times where on the process of us trying to achieve success, that there will be failures that will happen. There will be setbacks. There will be a stumbling block that happens in our life, and it's just bound to happen. So I think my question is going to be, have you ever failed at something? It doesn't have to be within your job, but if you want to talk about the job, it's definitely fine. But have you ever failed at something? And if so, like what are some actions that you took to get over that failure in order to get back on track to get into like success?
Yeah. So I think if you haven't failed at something, you're not pushing yourself to the limits or what you need to be pushing yourself to. Because life is about failing and making mistakes and about pushing yourself up and how you rebound from that failure. So I could go into a lot of different nuances of a lot of different projects I've worked on where it's like, okay, I was presented this from like a manager or from my director, and this was the direction they wanted to go in, but I'm hitting like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle when I'm seeing, okay, well, this is our main objective. Why don't we pivot and try it this way? Why don't we do a different way or a new foundation? And as long as you're presenting like the reasons why and you're explaining why we failed or why we didn't succeed when we were looking at this avenue or this way. And as long as you're still thinking of that overarching goal, like your overarching what you need to achieve or what is being asked of you, that is where you're going to see yourself succeed. And are there times you're going to drop the ball? Yes, of course. We're only human, right? As long as you're hitting 90% of the time, like you're hitting strikes or you're making sure you're hitting it out of the park, that's perfectly fine. But you need to communicate essentially what you need, where you're at, what's going on, especially when it's somebody who's being something that's being asked of you from an upper, like from anybody who's above you, whether it's supervisor, manager, director, so on and so forth. And even in life, it's okay to fail too. So for instance, right now, I'm working on expanding my personal life and making sure I'm having more of that work life balance in order to see more success in my personal endeavors. Because when you focus on one form of your life, that can take over your life. So, for instance, I make it a requirement for myself to travel to at least two different countries a year because that's a passion of mine and something I love. And then I challenge myself to do something new and creative at least once a month, something new that pushes the boundaries of myself at least once a month that gets me out of like my habitual weekend routine or whatever I do. So, like finding things that constantly grow and adapt yourself. And that's what's going to, at least for me right now, where I'm currently at, that's what's helping me lead to my success. So, failures, yes, they're always going to happen, but it's what you learn from them.
Absolutely. So it's definitely a learning experience when it comes to failures. I know sometimes people may look at failures and automatically think that it's time to give up. It's like, no, like this is not the time to give up. Like still keep that goal in your head and like do not let one no, or like if you were offered a job or if you went for an interview for a job and were told no, like we hired somebody else. Like don't let that be something that that stops you from pursuing your goal of, if you want to be a doctor and you've gotten a no from this school, you can't come into this program. You got a no from the other one. Like don't, no matter how many no's you hear, it only takes one yes to make that change. And and there's so many schools out there if you want to be a doctor or whatever you want to pursue. And so just do not let nothing like stop you. And like so just really, if there are times where you do fail, as whether it's in work or whether it's in your personal life, just reevaluate like your goal again. So just look at the goal, like knowing like, okay, this didn't work, let me try another way to get this to work. And this, maybe this will work this time. So just really reevaluating and like asking yourself why did it happen, and then figuring out how can I do better with it and how can I further improve on myself. Because like I said, sometimes the failures can happen. I mean, well, a lot of the failures can happen by our own doing. Like it can be us. We could have dropped the ball, like you said, and like it could not. It doesn't have to be the other person saying no, you didn't get the job. Like I said, we had to figure out why. Why did I? Why was I being told no, and this other person got the job? Or even if people out here going to school, if you tried really hard on a test and or actually in other words, if you actually didn't try hard enough and you found out that you failed and you just thinking that you were just going to procrastinate studying the night before, you may want to reevaluate that. Like, I can't just, study at the last second and then be running on fumes from no sleep and trying to take a test. I've definitely learned from that. It definitely doesn't work because you think you're like, oh, it's fresh on my memory, but it's like at the same time, your mind isn't processing correctly because you're running on sometimes no sleep or you're running on just like an hour of sleep. And I've definitely learned that running on an hour of sleep is terrible. Like I don't even feel like the same person. I feel like a completely like I feel like I'm like I don't know, I just don't even feel like a human. Like I just feel like a zombie, like sitting there in class, like trying to take a test. So definitely do not, procrastinate. So that's like one big example of when it comes to a failure. Like if you fail a test, you can figure out like, okay, well, I need to put more effort into studying. So that's just a one big example. So like as we know, failure comes and is going to happen. And like you said, if you don't fail, then you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Like I think you're giving yourself like you're not really I don't know, you're just comfortable with staying with where you're at. And I think it's always good to improve in every area of life because as we know, none of us are perfect. We're all human and we all have failures that like we can or that we can change, whether it's about ourselves or about something that we're currently doing in life, whether it's work, school, anything like that. So just always wanted to set that goal of really wanted to improve within ourselves each and every day.
Yes. So it's funny because it's a topic I feel like we're dancing around in our conversation, but it's self accountability. So important in anything, whether it's success or failure. And when you're having that realistic barometer with yourself on what led to this. So whenever I'm looking at anything, whether it's success or if it's failure, I always tell myself 20%, 20% of my success is just dumb luck, good luck, me being at the right place at the right time, me doing this, that, or the other, like just pure luck in some way. 80% of it is the work I put into leading that success. So whether it was like the communication component, the follow up, the whatever I'm putting into it, 80% was me making it happen. And then vice versa for my failures, 20% is just bad luck, bad timing, wrong avenue, whatever it was. And then 80% was the effort or the formulation or the foundation that I laid into it as well. And that's how I keep myself accountable on each component as well.
Yeah, self accountability is super huge in this, like when it comes to failure, because like I said, a big portion of it does boil down to our actions and stuff like that. So I said it's definitely big on just really looking at like having a self reflection moment and just really seeing what can I do to improve in this. And as I know at first reaction, like if you failed at something, you may feel sorry for yourself, and that's okay. But I just definitely don't dwell in that. I definitely don't constantly, you know, have a feeling defeated and feeling like, you failed at this. So I guess I'm never going to do this again. I'm just gonna some people, I mean, I hope nobody actually does it, but I'm sure there are some people that may have had failures and think, oh, I'm just going to quit this job. I'm just going to go get another job, or I'm going to quit school. I'm going to drop out of school because I failed one test.